Really glad to start these meetings. It's really hot here in Italy. I mean, me and Julia, we are in Italy, and instead Professor Andrea Nanetti is from the other side of the world, basically, since he's in Japan. And yes, this is like the very first webinar of a series of webinars that we do the whole week from Monday to Thursday. So I will please ask Clara to share just a few images to start the meetings. Thank you. Yes, this series of webinars is a series of webinars promoted by Accademia Unidee, which is the higher education institution of Fondazione Pistoletto, which is a contemporary art foundation in Italy. And as a higher education institution, we definitely work on social transformation, social responsible transformation, and sustainability as the very core of our academy. We do offer courses in arts and design and new media and also sustainable fashion, but always the very core of every course is sustainability. So the webinar we will try to present this evening. Clara, can you please get to the next? At this title, so arts and sustainability, the higher education perspective. This is quite interesting topic. I mean, talking about how higher education can work on the issue of sustainability. There are many possible ways of intending sustainability and higher education. There is, for sure, one of the, let's say, more concrete way of talking about sustainability in higher education is talking about the structure, the campuses, the architecture. This is something we do work a lot in Accademia Unidee, since we have this long experience also in bioarchitecture and alternative forms of energy. But we are not definitely talk about sustainability and higher education only from the point of view of architecture, which is a very specific, let's say, field. But we want to talk about how we can teach and research about sustainability from the higher education perspective. So this is why this talk, this online talk, is promoted by this school, the School of Media Arts and Social Transformation, which is a school who has this 3-year course on new media, and let's say it's really a course about cultural studies and media studies, where to learn how to practice new media, but also of course to understand the new media and the power of the digital culture, the power, the opportunities, and also the problems connected with the media culture and the digital studies. So it's very interesting that this school is promoting this specific webinar, because we definitely know that sustainability nowadays is really much connected with also digital side of the world, let's say. And the real fact that we are doing this webinar online, and we come from different parts of the world, and we talk about sustainability in this environment, it really means that somehow we cannot talk about the culture of sustainability if we do not talk also about the impact of the digital culture and the digital world. And we all know from the lockdown experience how much also the urban experience was and is connected to the digital possibility to access to the network. So the digital divide is also part of the same story, let's say. So this talk this evening, we will discuss it with two very interesting panelists. So Clara, please. Thank you. So Professor Andrea Nanetti and Professor Giulia Sonetti. We start from Giulia. since I have to say, first of all, thank you to Julia, because we know each other since quite a lot, and I always appreciated a lot her work, since Julia is working on sustainability since many, many years, and trying to understand how sustainability can be implemented and how we can teach sustainability. Let's say she has a very interesting profile. She's teaching at the Polytechnic of Turin in Piedmont, in Italy. But she also works in the Polytechnical in the Green Team, which is a team who has the goal of promoting a sustainable campus and, let's say, a sustainable approach to education as well. And also, she's a principal investigator of a network, of an international network, which is a very interesting network named TRUST, Transdisciplinarity for Urban Sustainability Transition. And it's really interesting, this point, because in a way, Julia, she's starting, let's say, from the point of view of a faculty of architecture, but she really works on the transdisciplinarity as a key for, let's say, promoting urban sustainability. Then, of course, she does many other things. Just to mention one more, she's also part of the advisory board of an international journal, which is very much connected with the topic we discussed this evening, because the journal is the Journal for Sustainability in Higher Education. So she's really, let's say, very into the topic, into the issue. And then we have Professor Andrea Nanetti, and Andrea Nanetti is, of course, Italian from his roots, but he works in Singapore, and he's an associate professor at the School of Art, Design, and Media at the NTU University. And I also really like, I personally met Andrea a few months ago. I guess it was 1 year ago or something like this, because we, together with the Pistoletto Foundation and NTU University, we started different projects together. But there is one specific project which is, let's say, run by Professor Nanetti, which is a laboratory, which is called LIBER, which is a laboratory of interdisciplinary, bookish, and experiential research. And this laboratory of the university, it's part of a building of the NTU University, and on the top of the building there is a sign of the Third Paradise, which is also the logo of our academy, which is a project by Michelangelo Pistoletto, which is the founder of our academy. And it's a project for a new paradigm of sustainability. In a way, the Third Paradise is an idea. It's a project we can share and we can discuss together. And it's the very core of anything we do. So another very interesting point about Professor Nanetti is that since many, many years, he is really working, let's say, on sustainability, on social transformation from the point of view of culture, and from how we can, let's say, promote a change and a responsible change in what we do, and also in a very also from the point of view of engineering, let's say, so from a very scientific point of view, but how culture and our culture of a European culture, a Western culture, but also, let's say, mixed and influenced by the other culture of the world, can be the very basis of our way of interacting with the world. And that's why sustainability can find its roots in culture somehow. So I will not say anything more than this, just very few words to present myself. I'm Michele Cerruti-Put, and I'm the academic coordinator of Accademia Unidee, the institution I was just mentioning, which is promoting this webinar. And I'm an urbanist. I work with the cities, and I'm always try to understand the relations between territory, society, and economy. But I really would love to ask Julia first, and then Andrea to give us a short presentation around this very huge topic. Of course, it's not really possible to go deep inside every single aspect of this topic because it's art and sustainability, the higher education perspective. It's very demanding issue. And as I told you, each of the panelists has a different background and different research interests as well. But since I know them and I know their research, I really know that they will give us a strong key points to reflect and to start with a deeper research. So yes, I would really kindly ask Julia to jump into the conversation. And
hi.
Hello.
Hello, thank you very much. No pressure for all the beautiful things you said about me, so I feel honored and dialogue with you. So there, a presentation I made for today. Please confirm if you can see the slides. So since the topic is quite broad, I tried to cut this frame about sustainability and arts in our regime of historicity to recall the words by Hartog. So I will go through a bit of facts and figures about sustainability today, a bit of narratives about sustainability today, and a bit of utopias about sustainability education in higher education and arts. So let's start our journey in the Paris Agreement room. It was maybe 5 years ago, and the Paris Agreement has become the international community definitive attempt and perhaps its final opportunity to halt most at some point in the first century there will be to have zero CO2 emission into the atmosphere, and the transition to an energy model based on decarbonization will have to be complete. So achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement, that are the famous 17 Sustainable Development Goals by United Nations, is a collective challenge for which there are few historical precedents. And if we manage it, the world between 2050 and 2100 will be dramatically different to the world we were born into and grew up in. So to get there, we will have to accept that the problem is not just one of engineering. It's not just, the typical three pillars divide between society, environment, and economy. These are 17 goals, so not one, not three, but 17, and maybe there should have been more. But the transition will require, for sure, a great effort and sacrifice. We will have to rethink about our food production. You see, many of those goals touch upon those issues. Maybe we will need to redesign cities and homes, transport, demographic growth, and above all, however, we will need to improve our ability to imagine a world in which the notion of progress is no longer linked with the death of growth, and in which the unlimited extraction of resources stops being the basis of our relationship with nature and with the planet itself. Or to say it with the Latour word, we have to start to be terrestrial and developing. So the ability to imagine another world necessarily involves taking ideological, political, and cultural issue. Of course, you see this. This is the ICSU paper about the interaction about the different SDGs, and it's incredible how complex should be the impact of one into each other, and it doesn't have to be for sure positive, the impact. It could be even counteracting sometimes. So there is no single institution able to cover, oversee, dominate, manage, trace the ecological issue of large shapes and scopes. And many issues are too intractable and too enmeshed in contradictory interests. So we have problems, but we don't have the publics that go with that problem. Indeed, I prefer to show these slides about the SDGs because these are the representation of how the hierarchy among them should be. So the biosphere is the one at the basis. The society is the one. Oh, sorry for the background, but they canceled my train today, and so I did the train to come hopefully. So anyway, sorry for the, if the audio is not so good in quality. But coming back to our speech, the economy should on many things that can make those sphere interact with other in a positive way, and not the main issue as we are used to think about. So what we are to, how we could amid so many entangled interests, and what we are supposed to do when faced with an crisis that does not resemble any of the crises of war, and of which is formidable to be sure, but which we are in a way habituated. It is of human or human, right? So what to do when told they and increasingly strident ways that our present civilization is doomed, that the earth itself has been so tampered with that there is no way it will ever come back to any of the various steady states of the past. So what do we do when the questions are too big for everybody, and especially for us working in higher education that are supposed to give some hints about orienting these complex times? So the difficulties in reality for implementing those 17 SDGs, that is sustainability right now, are not caused by knowledge gap, because we have all the knowledge we need. The problem is the knowledge doing gap, and its connection between our collective consciousness and our collective action. So one of the reasons why we feel so powerless when asked to be concerned about the ecological crisis and sustainability, the reason why I begin to feel so powerless is because of the total disconnect between the range, the nature, and the scale of the phenomenon, and the set of emotions, habits of thoughts, and feelings that would be necessary to handle those crises, not even to act in response of them, but simply to give them more than a passing air. So that is where I think arts is essential. Not you notice I mentioned the word emotions, and let's share this extract from the encyclical Pope Francis, that maybe is the only one nowadays that really connected the ecological crisis to the social injustice. These two phenomena that are the cause of each other. So he says, a sober look at our human intervention, often in the service of business, actually even as advances and consumer goods continue to abound limitlessly. We seem to think that we can substitute an irreplaceable and irretrievable beauty with something which we have created ourselves. So artists feel this connection. Artists feel what is beautiful. Artists feel what is happening. They create that emotional ambience in which the artist seeks by intuition to make sympathies between the exterior scene and the interior emotion. So in the etymology of the word education is educo from Latin. So I conduct something from one place to another. So the emotion is of the same etymological root for the so coming from one place, and the movement toward another. It's practice. And the point I would like to make here is that when we are in this Weltanschauung and the Anthropocene and see numbers about the acceleration of socioeconomic trends that perfectly mirror the Earth system trends. What we need to do about now is to transform this conventional way of interpreting economy, society, and culture arts to a more regenerative and holistic thinking. And this is not easy because it takes a lot. This frames my theory that I used to I used to teach and I used to practice while teaching decision making for sustainable development goals at Polytechnic di Torino. And this is a theory developed and as you see, it very much encompasses the individual level of suspending past pattern, seeing with fresh eye and redirecting from the field our energy, let go of our passive prejudice and cynicism and fear, and start with a new eyes, a new heart, and a new will, and a new process, asking who is myself, what is my work really, and letting come new vision and crystallizing new intention and prototyping new thing. If you think about this, is exactly the process that artists do, even unconsciously, of course. Why the importance of envisioning something? Because, for instance, this is the model that Kate Raworth proposed for the donuts economy. So this is where the outside is made of the ecological burdens, air pollution, ozone layer depletion, climate change, that encompasses safe ceiling for humanity, not to be overcome. Otherwise, the Earth couldn't be our partner in assuring our quality of life. As well as he also encompasses not only these ecological burdens, but also the social foundation that are needed for the economy and the safe and just space for all. So this is a great transformation, to recall the words of Karl Polanyi, that is needed to reorganize our knowledge, our education, our societies, and our markets. And I see here arts as a framework in new form of social change. The important culture is art in the forefront of cultural and systemic changes needed. An essential element for this shift is education, as I was to rethink from a change in education to an education for change. And that's why Michele was mentioning my project about disciplinarity, because a transdisciplinary eco-literacy may be the path towards a collaborative, cooperative, and responsible approach, so that arts can move at path. I suggest to have a look at this lecture by Bruno Latour, Waiting for Gaia, Word to Arts and Politics, and I will close with that. Here, I just want to highlight what I mean when I refer to arts for sustainability. So I refer to something really different, spanning between two opposite entry points. Kind of arts and sustainability you may find in Google search when you go for it. So normally it's okay. I mean, every form of art, speaking about sustainability, it's okay. But here I wanted to challenge ourselves to make another point. It's not only about street artists thinking about the 17 SDGs, or musician with those SDGs around, or plastic fishes made with the water bottles recovered for motions, or arts made with the recyclable and sustainable material. Talk about something that make you move from your chair, move and raise, and raise your voice from your saturated passive listening, move to tears. And for instance, this the most in Barcelona was called Desde la fin del mundo, so after the end of the world. And it was a spatial essay on the present and future of climate crisis, a journey to the landscape of the Anthropocene planet and the conversation with the human and non-humans in the year 2100. Keeps and of sand, novelists, sea creatures, ice, plants, architects, objects, particular, they have worked together to reimagine situations, to tell stories, and to devise strategies for survival in a peaceful cohabitation in the world to come. So the result was an hypnotic and one of the crisis and the disappearance of the world we once knew, but also one that speaks to the opportunity for change and of the pressing intergenerational impact. So this was one of the projects that hit me most. It was called Mitigation of Shock by Superflux Studio. Here is the video, but maybe I will save it for later if we have time or Michele says something about it. But basically it was an immersive installation made by this studio, the Superflux, that takes the form of a domestic living space from London in 2050. And so using extrapolation from current climate change data, it explores a future world where economy and political fragility, broken supply chains, and social fragmentation and food insecurity have become the norm. So the installation asks us to experientially explore how such large scale trends impact, learn about might do so, and what might future. So really than any paper or book I wrote, or this is another a totally different artist that doesn't declare himself to talk about climate change, but I think it's a radically different concept, but go to the same point. The first a conceptual and perception on the world and the medium and the image, such as the painting, the object, the photography, the fiction, the film, and his works and his text in materials and processes exploring, the topic of presence and absence, the visible and invisible, the transparent, the appropriation and the creation to relate of it in modern society and the lack of meaning. So I love that work because it really ignites a critical sense, looking at what the university, the world is giving to us as an output. And although it does feature lesser known pieces of periods of story and size, it really offers a journey which question the conventional system that represent the artworks. So I his work because how fragile our social to go deeper, not thinking that a definition, an ideology, the science, the technology would save us. So the intervention with this out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong is and it's world full of things to talk about. And indeed, so I hope to have given some hints about why it might be important, even urgent, to bring together all the possible resources to close the gap between the size and the scale of the problems we have to face in sustainability and education and arts, and settle the emotional and cognitive states that we associate with the task to call the responsibility without calling or denial. For this reason, I resurrected fashion in terms of political. For me, that is to be the nexus between sustainability and arts, for describing how, in my view, the link between arts and sustainability should be intended, and the need to train professional artists and scientists, social and natural scientists, to the triple task of scientific, political, and artistic representation. So I see really here arts as a framework for testing this new form of social change, and I hope to hear back from you. What do you think about that? And I thank you for the, and I stop sharing here.
Thank you very much, Julia. I mean, it was very inspiring in many, many points. Let's say, it was, of course, a really, let's say, involved in the discourse of the U curve, since from the point of view of art, of course, it kind of starts from performing. So it's a kind of completely different paradigm. So like the real, one of the possible approaches of art is not all this way, of course, but one of the possible approaches of art is start from performing, and then performing is still one of the steps of including seeing and sensing and presenting and crystalling and prototyping, but by performing. So this way, and I can also share with you this image to explain what I was mentioning. So this image is a project we did, like Pistolet Foundation did in Cuba in 2015. It was the end of November, and it was only very few months after the moment when they presented the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And basically, it was the very first time in the world, like presenting the goals, like trying to use the goals for making something. I won't enter in this issue, of course, otherwise it will take too much, but this is just for explaining that when we say that art is always trying to practice, to put into practice, to perform, since the very beginning, this is exactly the story. So the Sustainable Development Goals were just presented, just a few months later, after having done third paradise with some boats in front of Cuba. They said, okay, but what if we want to change something? What do we have to do? Okay, let's try to start from the goals. And this is like one of the most interesting way of art. So from one point is that there's a critique to the problems, the issues, so on. But then we also say critique is not enough, and so we always have to try to practice and to perform. So yes, I find a lot of connection to it. But I would also really love to listen to Professor Nanetti, since I know that his approach, I would love to give us a presentation with a title, which is Dancing Over Ideas, which is a design and an application, let's say, of a research model. But please, Andrea, let us know something more about this research, which lasts from a while.
Thank you, Michele, for the nice introduction. Thank you for the invitation. I'm quite grateful to Unidee to have involved me in this project of talks that is getting online on the webinar. I enjoyed quite a lot my stay at Città dell'Arte last year, and I'm missing it, somehow, but the webinar is a kind of a surrogate, and maybe more people can reach the content. Having said that, I had prepared a PowerPoint to share with you some information and slides that will support my talk. Let me start with sharing the screen. Okay. We go to the presenter view. Okay. So it should be okay now, the presentation. Is it okay, Michele, on your screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So wonderful. So thank you, Julia, for the for your presentation, which complements nicely with what I'm going to speak about, because what I'm trying to do is to answer your key question. What to do when questions are too big and concepts are too complex, and there is too much to learn, and we feel powerless what to do and how to start. It is a few years now that I'm working on this set of methods to build up a methodology to approach complex ideas and concepts. The title that I gave is Dancing Over Ideas. Dancing is both an acronym and a metaphor of the kind of methodology that I'm putting up. The subtitle is linked to the topic of the webinar, so for a sustainable and open knowledge society. These two terms are far too big and far too complex to be approached with standard methodologies. So how can we move forward? The approach that I presented starts from a traditional perspective. You can see here on the left one of the very common images that we find on the web when we search for big data, for complex situations, for too much to know, how to navigate all the knowledge that is available. And on the right, you see the traditional way to approach this topic is the giant Orion, and on his shoulder is standing his servant. As the giant Orion, according to the myth, is blind, and the servant is helping him, is guiding him. This myth went down in history, was acquired by Newton. Stephen Hawking liked it quite a lot in the last years of his life. And this powerful metaphor is guiding us into the main point, which is there is too much to know. There is a lot available, and we are in this ambiguity because for the complexity of the problems of sustainability that we are facing nowadays, we cannot miss anything. We are into the situation that we cannot think about missing any human experience because everything is relevant, as Julia has presented to us. Everything is connected, everything is relevant, and the solution may come from unexpected situation, places, and bits of knowledge. So one of the first approaches comes from this medieval representation of giant Orion. There's not only the metaphor of the young of the next generation that is not only guiding the treasure of human experiences, but is also standing on the shoulders of this giant. And the giant in this first half of the 15th century representation, if you look at the skirt of the giant and you read what is on the skirt of the giant, it means the foundation of that giant, says, philosophiae docet, inquirere quid sit honestum, quod mare, quod celum, quod homo, quid terra, quid aer partes dividit artes, and so on. And closing with philosophiae again. It's a summary of the kind of education that was imparted during the medieval period, the trivium and the quadrivium, and it is a sort of foundation for us as well. So to introduce this topic, I wanted to give you this long perspective, saying that the problems that we are facing are big, are huge, but other human beings face the same problems in different areas, in different ways, how to solve and to connect to this big amount of knowledge. To introduce my talk on methodology this afternoon, night for me now, I will use the 7 Aristotelian circumstances relevant to the understanding of human actions, because I feel that all these is a human action, is the acquisition of relevant knowledge to face crucial challenges in our society. Following the 7 circumstances, the who is quite general but specific at the same time. So it is the connection of 2 generations. It's the generations of the Xers, in which I include myself as well, and the millennials, in which I include my students usually. So a dialogue for polymaths, and the scope is expanding the thinkable future beyond inherited past and visible presence, which is the title of a paper of mine that I already shared with Michele and is available online. Moving forward is the when. The when is always now, is in the present, because this is the only thing we have. The why is more complex, because the why has big words. The why is, of course, because we want to become the humans that we desire. We have a desire of humanity, of human being, of a kind of life that we would like to live. And the challenge is how to reach that desire. So how to become the humans that we want. So the big words and the complex concepts that we have are love and ethics. Love in the large and specific term, which is connected to agape and caritas in Greek and Latin, and is transformed, and maybe today the best English word that we can find to translate this concept that comes from antiquity is empathy. And it is called, it is connected to philanthropia, it is connected to humanitas and other terms. In this way, I used the same slide that Julia was using earlier, and I connected it to the third paradise, which is the connection that I found quite inspiring and very practical in the establishment of the lab at NTU, the Liber Lab, the laboratory for interdisciplinary, bookish, and experiential research. And here is the conceptual art installation that was proposed by Pistoletto for the third paradise on the rooftop of the School of Art, Design and Media in Singapore. It is still there, quite healthy. It suffered a little bit during the COVID lockdown because we had nobody pruning, nobody cutting the edge of the plants, but it's still fine. The what is the what of every time in human society is data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. Is this trend that is has been summarized by Akoff and Berlinger recently, but essentially can be found in any society and culture, starting from ancient ones like Confucius or Plato or other philosophers. We find this distinction. So data as isolated symbols that we associate with features in that side world, and information when we start to make relationships and we start to connect them. And knowledge is prescriptive, is when we have information that can act and can solve problems. It is what humans want. And wisdom is more complicated, is to know under which situation to act. And the two, wisdom and knowledge, don't walk side by side. If you see this nice excerpt from the Zibaldone by Leopardi, when he was comparing Socrates and Homer and Dante, what he was saying is that knowledge is good, but maybe, as Socrates was saying, we have only one good thing, which is knowledge, and we have only one bad thing, which is the uneducated, which is the unlearned. And Leopardi is reverting everything, is changing, and saying maybe more ignorance, less awareness of the human condition can give us a better life. So these two things, just to tell you that knowledge grows with humanity. Knowing how to do things is technology, is applied science, is many things that we know how to do. and we know how to act. Wisdom changes across time and space. It is a cultural selection, it is a choice, and it comes only from inside. That's why the why, I was putting the why at the very beginning, love and ethics. If we don't have a driving force in ethics and moral principles, we are lost, and we don't have the way to use, and we don't know under which situation to act and to use the power that we are having. Having said that, let's focus on knowledge, and I wanted to share these two large repositories that we have. One is a zoomable map of fields of human knowledge that is available online in thingsmadethinkable.com. It is quite a good approach to transdisciplinary concepts. The other one is a Swiss National Science Foundation project, is the Interactive Historical Atlas of the Disciplines. So these two projects give you the fields of knowledge. Knowing how to do things and what to do is in all these disciplines that we have and can master. On the other side, looking at the evolution of disciplines, we start to understand that things change continuously, even in disciplinary fields that we usually teach and present in universities as acquired and stable institutions. So disciplines are moving and changing. And firstly, if we look at the Interactive Historical Atlas of the disciplines, and we look at art and technology, we see how the two are one thing in the evolution from the 15th century to nowadays. So the question that comes now, getting toward the last two things in the 7 circumstances of human actions, is how. The only how that we have as humans is learning. It's the only how. And learning, not a simple learning, it's not a passive learning. It is a learning with curiosity, and curiosity is the strong desire to know, to acquire knowledge, to understand things. And the most powerful faculty of human being, which is imagination, which is the power of conceiving what does not yet exist. So these two things put together is the powerful how human beings do things. The basics of learning are very well known. Learning is based on being taught, which is instruction, training, and education, and study. So devoting time and attention to aggregate relevant, already existing knowledge and consolidated knowledge, and experience of the world, experience of the other, experience of human interaction, always driven by curiosity and imagination. The last point, which is usually missed into the 7 circumstances, is by what means, because it doesn't fit into the W's and into the how, but is one of the strongest elements because it is about the research methodologies. So which are the tools that we humans have to achieve these results? So is by what means is study and research, and again, driven by curiosity and imagination. These are the methodology and methods to aggregate existing and discover new knowledge. It is the process of changing. So this is the basic introduction to the methodological approach to approach to complex concepts and ideas. The method came out from deep reflections on the way in which humans know. And it is very much connected to the arts. It is connected to not only to learning and bookish studies, but is the experience. So the one essential awareness that humans have is the consciousness, being aware and responsible to our surroundings, which is a big thing. And starting in that way, it means that we don't make any difference between artistic approach, design approach, academic approach, religious approach, and so on. These are all human ways to approach the same thing. These are the human means to know. One essential faculty, there is only one faculty that we humans have, which is the imagination, which is the essential faculty in approaching knowledge. So the faculty or action of forming new ideas or images or concepts of external objects not present to the senses. We create things with one accepted quality in all disciplines, which is beauty. Beauty is accepted in mathematical principles, is accepted in chemistry, is accepted everywhere. It is the driving force that pushes our desires and push us towards making efforts in doing things. And at the end, we have the 5 traditionally recognized senses. It is the only way in which we absorb information and data from the external world with 3 main experience quantities. It is the way in which we humans reduce the complexity of reality to measures that can be linked to our body and to our mind. So this is the way in which we are working. Nothing new, because it is the method of trivium and quadrivium. It is the 7 liberal arts that move from Plato and go to medieval universities. It is the strong foundation of European teaching and education. It is the strong foundation to the acquisition of knowledge. You have the, not by chance, you have the Pythagorean triangle in which logic is connected to the senses. To reconnect, we can see that we need to train the mind on how to think. And this training is between instruction and education. As Julia was mentioning quite well, education is moving from a status to another, is bringing something from a place into another, is bringing a consciousness and an awareness from a place into another one. And is more than instructing, is more than training. Getting into the education process, we have interdisciplinary methods and problems that become quite difficult to understand nowadays. We are not very familiar on this big exclamation mark. Different languages, different methods, different approaches to similar things, and the reduction to an interdiscipline, to a new discipline, is quite difficult to grasp. So usually we have multidisciplinary approaches, many people talking about something in different ways, and maybe not even trying to agree or to find a synthesis, or somehow transdisciplinary approaches, getting different disciplines, trying to solve one single determined problem. In this, of course, we have artificial intelligence, which is helping quite a lot now, and machine learning is giving us a big boost. In this context, I tried to work on old and new methods to train machine learning algorithms in supporting and empowering human thinking in the framework that I presented earlier on. It's not that technology is creating a new world, which is quite a dangerous approach. Technology is quite powerful and can help if we know how to direct it. Going back, we need to have the wisdom to direct the technological power that we are having now. It's not enough to know how to do things. We need to know why we are doing things. And we need to be able to transfer this understanding into the algorithmic thinking. Otherwise, algorithms will learn what we are teaching to them, and nothing more, nothing less. So in this approach, first I developed a tetrahedron of research methodologies to prescribe solutions to problems. It's not to find solution, but it's a prescription. And a tetrahedron is something that can be built and gives the idea of something that is structured, it is geometrically defined, but needs to be made, needs to be built. And when you have it, you can play with it in different ways. So is academic research, artistic research, and design research. The three of them on the shoulders of the giants. So grounded on art, culture, and heritage, which is what I like to call the treasure of human experiences, which, of course, machine learning and artificial intelligence can help to understand and to better connect. This too much to know can become a wealth rather than being lost in the big sea of data. So after this approach is opening, opening to the wide range of possible knowledge and information available to us. We need now to focus on something. We need now to focus on how to deal with big concepts, with huge things like what is art, what is sustainability, what is life, and so on. And we cannot say anymore, it is too complex, it is too complicated, we cannot deal with it, it is too much. Because if you go back to the slide that both Julia and I presented, all these 17 things are far too complex. None of them is simple. They are huge things, and not only huge, they are interconnected, and they become even more difficult to grasp. So the attempt is to use the treasure of human experiences and determine a method to grasp these complex ideas. I call it dancing because dancing gives you the idea of moving quite lightly at the surface of something, but at the same time with a rhythm. Dance needs a music, needs a rhythm, needs something mathematical behind it. It is something at the surface, it's something simple, and of course we can have many resonances and metaphors linked to Nietzsche and other philosophers about the dancing and all the other things, which doesn't hurt. But it's not my point. My point is that we don't want to go deep and be trapped in this huge sea of knowledge. So the dancing method is an acronym that is working on definitions, assumption, notion, conception, interpretation, narrative, and gamut as a step-by-step method to approach complex ideas. Now, while I'm speaking, you can make your own exercise, thinking at keywords that you are interested in. I think maybe Julia wants to think about sustainability. And starting from definition, I put on purpose both the English and the Chinese Mandarin into the presentation to give an idea that definitions in a transcultural perspective are already complex ideas. There is nothing to translate. There are two different words. What we can get at the very basics is to have a shared knowledge. And the shared knowledge comes from how these words have been used so far. And usually we find this kind of aggregation of knowledge in our beloved dictionaries. And we find them online, we find them structured, and we collect, first of all, the statements and the exact meaning of a word, which aggregates the use of the term in a specific language. And we do dictionary mashups. It is the first kind of algorithm that I developed, is how to aggregate this knowledge into a machine learning perspective. The second thing goes to the academic disciplines that we have been discussing before. And that's why I made that long introduction. Because when you have something like sustainability, you need to think about which are the academic disciplines or the fields of knowledge or the means that humans used to approach that topic. when you have them, you start to play the dancing, or you start to dance according to each discipline. If you want to get an algorithm helping you in acquiring the notions and the conceptions, you need to share with the algorithm the assumptions on which a given academic discipline is based on. And I like this quotation from Dostak, Gnoli, and Lopez Huertas, 2016, saying, disciplinary researchers absorb a host of disciplinary assumptions in the course of their education. We do it as scholars, students do it at the university, in schools, epistemological, ethical, ideological, theoretical, and methodological assumptions. So these assumptions may often be unconscious. However, they interpret what others say through the lens of these assumptions. It means that even if we are not aware of the assumption that we are using, we are affected by them. And if we are scaling in a machine learning perspective and we are empowering human thinking, if we don't train the algorithm in the assumption, not only the algorithm gets lost, but goes into unexpected directions in which things that we assume for certain are not proved at all, and the search becomes a failure, or maybe worse than a failure. Having determined the disciplines, we start with one discipline. Each interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary approach starts from one discipline and must go back at least to that one discipline. It may provide solution to other disciplines as well, but going back to the one is quite important. So we can think about art and artistic research. And each of us in the framework of this academy can think about which are the assumptions of artistic research. What do we assume? And which is the kind of knowledge that we can find? We can go to biology. We can go to engineering. We can go to other disciplines and trying to see one by one, moving to step number 3. And we go and see, after having determined the discipline that we want to work on, we can ask to the algorithm to collect notions. So what that given discipline knows about the concept that I want to investigate. So what does that given discipline know about sustainability? And we want to have knowledge. We don't want to have conceptions or beliefs. We want to have knowledge, what that discipline knows for certain and proved. After that, of course, if we want to go beyond existing knowledge, we want also to understand which are the conceptions of that given discipline. So what that discipline believes that sustainability can do. Not proved, but the discipline is pushing towards that. Of course, still based on given assumptions. After that, only after that, we are allowed to let the algorithm browse papers, books, and published materials. Because now the algorithm knows how to search for concepts, how to search for notions, how to search for definitions, because the algorithm knows the difference. And of course, it can provide the results to the human being that can process the amount of proposed information, knowledge, and bits of wisdom. This goes to the last thing, because we are not exempted by narrative. If we don't give a narrative, an output narrative to the algorithm will use the narrative which has been given to it by the coder at the very beginning of its coding. So it's going back to its origins and is using the narrative that it knows, nothing more, nothing less. If we want to use another narrative, another way to propose things, to organize them, we need to train the algorithm in that thing as well. But it comes at the very end. If we do nicely and diligently all this process, we can think about having a gamut and having a semi-automatic gamut from different disciplines. We know that when we deal with one of the 17 goals, we have at least 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 disciplines that deal with that specific goal. For sustainability, maybe now each discipline is dealing with sustainability. In this way, this is the method that I put up. It's working quite well with graduate students. Is working in kicking off academic research, artistic research and design research, and helping them to make a coherent mashup of potential solutions. The other thing is the where, and the where is quite important. Even in our digital world now, you know, this webinar and Zooming things, we have the where, which is quite tangible, is academia and enterprise. These are the two main where. You can add a few others. You can add other more complicated things, because of course you can add churches, different churches, secular and religious. And in the secular, I put the political parties and the ideologies, which are kind of religions as well. So this was the framework in which I wanted to create and establish the Liber Lab under the inspiration, but it's something more than the inspiration, under the aegis of the Third Paradise. This is what's happening into the lab. It's talking, is using technologies, essentially is sharing ideas. Sharing ideas is discussion on a structured way. So it's using methods, sharing methods to find solutions to challenges, which can be simple things, a grant application, writing a paper, building up a PhD dissertation, building up a new syllabus, or approaching complex ideas. The inspiration came from the big labs that I visited in the last few years, the Stanford David Ranchman Center, the Meta Lab at Harvard, and the MIT Media Lab. And of course, all the other places that inspired me, including Città dell'Arte, Fondazione Pistoletto, the CRI in Paris, the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford, the Humanity Plus, which is an online educational organization becoming quite strong, and the new board NITS, the NTU Institute of Science and Technology for Humanity, that was born last year at NTU. So this is essentially all what I wanted to tell to you. And I'm showing at the end a few papers that summarize and present what I've shared with you this afternoon, evening. The Dancing Over Ideas has been presented during a 3-day event in 2018. And the 3-day event has been presented again in the Austrian annual book of cultural relations with overseas countries. And I presented it in Vienna again on that occasion. And I wrote something on the on Pistoletto between obverse and reverse, in which I summarized the concept of the Liber Lab. And recently I was working with Roberta and Anna on this creative economy and creative social economies, which I think is quite matching with what is going on in Città dell'Arte now. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you a lot, really. I would just love to add 2 thoughts and then to say one of the questions, because there is one question for you. Just to add 2 lines. I mean, the first one is, when you were talking about imagination, I totally agree with it. But I was also remembering Arabic philosopher, which is Ibn Arabi. It's one of the most interesting philosophers of the Arabic culture. And in the 12th century, he was really working on the idea of the creative imagination as the power for humans for understanding reality. And it was one of the first, basically, let's say from the Middle Ages on. And his vision, his understanding of the reality, it was so powerful. I mean, the way of understanding the humans as the ones able to have a creative imagination. So it's not only fantasy, but creative imagination. So this is really in line with this. And the second thought, instead, is about a French philosopher. He's Jean-Paul Pierron. And in 2006, he wrote this paper with the title of Engagement, Raison d'agir et envie d'agir. But he says basically that the culture and arts, they have a special role in the way of acting. So the engagement of arts basically moves from the reason for acting, since when we want to act, when we want to do something, when we want to change something, we have some reasons for doing it. So in his opinion, the engagement moves from the reason for acting to the desire for acting. And this is also very connected, again, with the performing that Julia was mentioning before. So being inside, you have the desire of acting. And the desire is, again, very close to the idea of beauty that you were mentioning before. So this, just to share with you these 2 thoughts that I was thinking what you were.
Thank you, Michele. It's quite interesting. Yes, thank you very much.
Can I just?
And then also,
yeah.
Yes, Julia, please.
No, just one little thing, because I was really fascinated by your lecture and I want to become your student. It's really amazing how you trace this history back and forth to the present. And I did started with the School of Athens, the Raffaello fresco that you also cited somewhere. I saw the picture.
Yes.
And it's a pity that then in the end I put it off, because it was really connected to what you were saying about utopias and Plato and facts and figures by Aristotle, and then the narratives that are pervasive now, and we have to be, exactly, they were aware of it. So I'm totally fascinated by the work you presented, and I'm looking forward to dig more in your works.
Thank you.
It was amazing. Thank you.
And then there is also a question for you both that maybe you can say something, since you also have experience. It's a question from the Q&A. The question is the contact between professors and students and professors are sort of multipliers of ideas. The more you are in contact, the more you produce ideas. So how come today? So how much can the absence of the physical presence affect creativity? This is a very contemporary question.
I can start with a little precision, because I always use this School of Athens at the beginning and in the end. The beginning to use Plato and Aristotle and all the other guys to pick up some concept about education and the creation of knowledge that was in the peripatetic school, around the porticos and moving and working together, exchanging ideas without disciplinary boundaries. And I use it in the end because of the importance of the physical place that anyway can exist, because Andrea also mentioned that when the answer of the question where was everywhere, indeed we don't have to think about academia or knowledge places as university or school. We learn everywhere now, in the street, above all, or during difficult moments like that. We can find a way of merging and be in touch with the problem that is nearby our door and we never cared about. And now we have the possibility to have the knowledge of doing something in our local environment with the support of guiding stars like Andrea and Fondazione Cospetto and whoever is interested in supporting an action in the place.
No, thank you, Julia. So I don't want to add much, that to prolong that thing, but I like the comment on the School of Athens. I keep on using it for, there is one reason that attracted me. So apart from the content of the philosophical content of the two leading figures in European thought, is that their schools were in gardens, and they were deeply immersed in natural landscapes. And the lab that I established is in a garden as well. The third paradise is a living installation, is plants. And this reapproaching nature is something that is coming out. Especially using webinars and doing all these meetings online. We have a sort of reconnection to nature. It sounds peculiar, but it happens. We enjoy more to walk around, to go to the forest, to go to the jungle, to go to have a run somewhere into the green. And we go and learn online. We meet other human beings online. We enjoy the online learning, but still we think about the natural landscapes. And I feel like sometimes this garden wear is quite important to reapproach again and to learn.
I can just add up on this regarding the Leuphana University in Lunenburg, that is one of the leading institutions for sustainability education in Europe. They teach permaculture to engineers, or they do have learning journeys alone in the nature, and they just give you the possibility to experience the journey of cultivating your little allotment. So it's really the connection with nature is, I think, is the key now to reconnect with ourselves and the world around. Michele disappeared, but
Michele, what do we do now?
I take my chance to say goodbye to you and to thank you very much for your
it was a pleasure to meet you, Julia.
Yes.
And I thank Michele for the connection, for putting up the panel.
Yeah, indeed.
Here I am. Sorry, I was losing the connection. I was listening to you from the phone, but I was missing your faces. Anyway, yes, thank you a lot for this conversation. And I also want to invite you all to take part also to the meetings of the next webinars we will do the next days. So tomorrow we will talk about radical art education and formal art education. Then on Wednesday, it will be about borders and boundaries. So how to engage Europe, how to make the world relevant for Europe, which is the only way for making Europe relevant for the world. And then on Thursday, we will talk about performing slow fashion. So thank you a lot to Julia and to Andrea. And yeah, let's keep in touch. I will keep all the things you say like really in my mind and my research for sure, because you were really inspirative and powerful. Thank you a lot.
Thank you so much. Bye bye. Good night, Andrea.
Bye. Bye.
Grazie Michele. Ciao.